Hi, this is Mark from Snooker Crazy, and I've been asked to do a video on a trumpet tip, otherwise known as a crown tip. It's one where the ferrule goes like that, and the tip is a lot larger than the ferrule, so the size of the tip go out like that. Who would use that? Barry Hawkins would use that, Walden, players like that. If you go on my website and look at tip shapes, you'll see both of them on there. And it's predominantly fitted for somebody who wants a larger hitting area, so a larger tip, but they want to keep their existing cue and the ferrule's not large enough. Works very well, as long as you fit them solid. So I'll give you the fundamentals of how to fit one today. So first of all, take off the old tip. So I use a number 3 blade holder scalpel and a 10A blade. The reason I use it, it's really sharp. You can use a standing knife and that, but I find a little bit harder to do it and a little bit more fiddly. So this is nice and thin and quite easy to shape. So let's take that one off to start with. It's quite an older cue, this one. So let's see how that goes. Not easy. It's quite a thin ferrule, this, so not the easiest in the world to do with a mushroom tip on it. Now what I say is take some time when you're cutting any tips off. You don't want to damage the ferrule. The purpose really is to get the glue off. That's about it. This looks a pretty poor one, this. The surface of it. Just gently scrape without taking brass off your ferrule, but just gently take the glue off, and when you're happy enough you've got the glue off and you've got a flat area, then you'll be ready to go. So just a bit of glue at a time. When you can't see any more coming off, then you're probably there. And what I do is, what you can't see is a window behind the camera. I generally put the flat part of the blade up and have a look. See, there's actually not the best one to do this on. It's not perfectly flat, so hopefully it will stay on just for the purpose of the video. What I normally do is pop this in a lathe and just ground the top of that flat, but we'll see how that goes. Hopefully that'll be alright. Right. Now this is a 8.7mm ferrule, so reasonably small. So what we're going to do is we'll fit as large a tip as we can to that. So we'll fit an 11mm tip, so that gives us what, 2.3mm. So hopefully we can get a reasonable shape so you can see it on the video. So first thing to do, protect your ferrule and your shaft, just for when you're going to do your sanding. I'm in a bit of a tight space here, so if I fall over and go out the video, I'll be back in a second. Right. Right, just a bit of masking tape. Master 11mm. Hopefully this will be reasonably hard enough to do that. So it looks big enough to give a good representation of a ferrule and an angle anyway. Right, now what I generally do is all the elks, and as a lot of tips do, they come with glues and other things on the bottom of the tip. So what you're going to do is just quickly get that off, and you're going to put it on a bit of sandpaper. Hopefully you can see this. I'll point it down. I've got a bit of 120 grit sandpaper there. I'm just going to score the bottom to get it flat so the glue can take. And all you do is you do it on a figure of 8. So you can see that most of that's gone now. A rough figure of 8 shape should actually manage to keep it even. Right, it's up to you whether you do that. Always blow the dust off, otherwise you'll be sticking the glue onto that. Some people like to score the bottom of the tip. I've got into the habit of doing this, but I don't generally do it. Whether it makes a difference or not, I don't know. The tips don't normally come off, but a couple of score marks on there, it can't hurt. I use Gorilla Glue now. It's got a little bit of give in it, so apparently it's got a little bit of compression when you're hitting the cue ball, but whether it has, I don't know. But what I like about it is because it's gel, it gives you a little bit more time to move the tip around. But whether you use that or Loctite's fine. Right, now with the gel, you really do need to give it a little bit of a shake, because if it's been dormant for a while, it can start to separate a little bit. So you want to make sure it's decently mixed. And you'll get different people do different things the way they stick the tips on. I tend to just put the glue on here normally, but for the sake of a mushroom tip, we don't want any left on the bottom, so we'll actually put it on the ferrule this time and make sure there's enough on there. You don't need to go mad, you just need enough, and you'll get a feeling for that. So just a dab would do it generally. Right, now you can put 3 matches on the side of this if you want to tape them round, so when you push this down it will keep it central, but I'll do it the awkward way and try and just get this in the middle with my fingers, gently touching it and moving it round. Now if you hold it to the light, that'll be good. Careful about any glue on the shaft, clearly you don't want that. Right, now I don't use a tip clamp, I just turn these upside down. You can't see as I've got a 6-inch tile on the floor, and just evenly push the tip into that. Not going mad, just putting some pressure on there. So this looks a particularly wonky ferrule, so hopefully this is going to be okay. Now for a gel, I'll probably do this for about a minute, and for the sake of the video we'll probably go into it a bit quicker, but normally I just put the cue aside for 5 minutes after that just to give it a chance to take. One thing to be aware of really when you're doing a trumpet type tip is the tip itself from the ferrule is going out that way. So as you're cutting it, you're actually pushing the tip away from the ferrule. So if you haven't given it long enough, there's a good chance it's going to want to come off. So just be careful when you're doing it. It's one of the reasons why I like using a scalpel, because I only take a very small amount off at a time. And you can pop a couple more blades in there just to make sure it's sharp. Important thing to remember with these is just don't rush them. If you're doing a normal tip and you're cutting the sides, that's fine because the pressure's going outwards. But with these, if a tip's going to come off, this will be the one. So, next. I tend to then take the masking tape off of the ferrule. That way I can get a better judgment as I'm spinning the cue to keep the tip even as I'm cutting that shape. So you can see a bit. So you can practice with a matchsticks if you like, or like that, but you can shape it how you want afterwards. But again, it depends what size you want at the end. What I'm going to try and do is to, if you were to draw a line from the base of the ferrule to the top part of the tip, diagonal line, that's going to be the shape all the way around. So what you generally do is you start cutting from the base of the tip and just taking that off, and I tend to just keep my scalpel in one place, angled on that line going across, and I'm going to slowly turn the cue and just take a piece off at a time. If you feel the scalpel's not sharp enough or it's got blunt, then I'll just stick another blade in, and I'll probably put 2 or 3 in doing this. So hopefully this has gone off enough to stay on there with a bit of luck, so it didn't look perfectly flat. And we'll start. So I'm going to get that part of the blade and start there, as that will be nice and sharp. It's quite intricate. You won't be able to see too much, but hopefully try and explain. So if if you imagine I'm trying to cut that line diagonal, starting at the base, spinning the cue as I'm doing now. I'm going to slowly turn the cue as I go. I'm sure there's other methods for doing this, but I've had so many videos asking how I've done them that it's worth at least giving you an idea. And if someone's got an easier method, stick on a video and we'll use that. At the moment you can see it coming off slowly. I've got a bin on the floor, it's not just going on the floor. So in a little while we should be able to see a shape coming. Yeah, it's already it's probably a blunt blade to start with by the looks of it. So if you don't feel it cutting or you've got a particularly hard tip, then just stick another blade in. You should be able to feel your way around. Hopefully this is a decent elk. Bit pot luck nowadays in what you get in a box. But if I was doing this with a blue diamond now, which is a good tip, but you'll get covered in chalk dust, so I'm using this just for the sake of the video really. Right, now as you're cutting, the impregnated chalk should disappear as you go deeper, and you'll start to see the grey of the press tip coming through, which will give you an idea what you're cutting and what you're not. So if you're not cutting it very evenly, it should start to stick out, but try to take a little off at a time and keep it as even as possible, because as you're spinning you want it to be a reasonably perfect line going upwards, and I'm pushing upwards with pressure, so if you're in a bit of a rush there's a good chance you might ping it off. Obviously when you're striking the cue ball, the tip's compressing against the ferrule and the pressure's going up the shaft. When you're cutting it initially to put the tip on, you're pushing it sideways or upwards, so as long as you get a decent fit at the beginning you'll be okay. But as you're cutting, try and imagine that top end you're cutting towards that, not just upwards. Otherwise you'll just end up cutting a normal tip shape. So just keep that line as I can see it now and cut towards that all the time. Now I've used a particularly small ferrule. I wouldn't normally have a ferrule this small, but when you're trying to show something where it's a 9.6mm ferrule and a 10mm tip or even an 11mm tip, it's difficult to see it in the video itself. So it's the shape you're trying to see, obviously, and the method. So let's get in there. But you're starting to hopefully see in the video the difference. It's difficult for me to see here, but hopefully you're getting a better picture of that, and obviously you can pause yours and go out a bit. But you can see that the top surface of the tip compared to the ferrule now there's a significant difference there. So if you're looking for a larger hitting area and you want to keep the same cue because you've had it a while, then this is the way to go for a lot of people. They like to balance the cue and they want to keep it that way. And all we're trying to do now is just get a bit closer to the top. I was keeping it even. So put it up to a light surface, so as I'm doing at the moment, I'm just having a gentle look round. It's not for everyone, but then if you look at the tip shapes that I've got on my website, there are many different types, and one thing's for sure, there are many types of tips for good players. If there's only one really good type, obviously all the top professionals will be using it. As you can see by the probably 40 or 50 different tip shapes I've got on there, these guys are really good at what they do no matter what the shape. They've just got a personal preference and gone with it. Swap this over again to try and save a bit of time. So just a bit at a time, just moving towards that line right at the top. When you're pretty much on the line and you're happy with the shape, well, you're there really. So it's not too far off. I'm going to try and lean it across the whole line now. So I'll try and get the whole diagonal bit and just skim it for any bits that are popping out. So I'm in a bit of a tight space here, so I probably won't get it absolutely spot on, but you're getting a pretty good idea. And if you're trying, as on this lot, I'm actually trying to touch the whole line across from the bottom to the top now, and just picking up anything that happens to be sticking out to keep it neat. So if you look at Ricky Walden's on there, it didn't look the greatest. It's only visual, the top area was perfect, so it's just about keeping it neat now. I did a tip for a guy not too long ago. I knocked a 147 in with a century tip. Tip didn't look perfect. He wasn't particularly happy with it. Still knocked a 147 in with it, and came back to change the tip because he wanted a different shape and a different hardness. But the tip itself, the top area is great. The base of it wasn't the best I'd ever seen, but I don't actually think it needs to be. It's a visual thing. Right. I think not too far off there for the side shape. Now what you do with the top, you can look at all the other videos I've done for that, it's entirely up to you. Just the one thing to bear in mind is as you're shaping this and you go down a bit, if it was a 11mm you're after and you fit an 11mm, as you go down it will be reducing, because where the tip's like that, as I say, the bottom was, I'm trying to think of this one, it was 8.7 at the bottom, 11mm at the top. As you go further down that line, you're going to go down to 10.5, 10, etc, etc. So if you're going to shape the top, then remember what you want and continually check it. If you haven't got a gauge, then it's going to be a bit of a guesstimate, but I see people like getting rid of the chalk on the end of this. They've done all the hard work. They take a bit of 80 grit out of 120 and they're going away at it, and then before you know it, you've got a normal shape. So, well, I've got a bit of 400 there. The top of it looks pretty good. So it does depend on what sort of height you want, but you might have to play around with whichever tip sizes you want. But I just skim the top surface personally. And then it really depends what you want to do on the sides. Now for the sides, this is where you want to be a little bit careful. I've got a particularly big ferrule on this one. So when you go to clean the ferrule and any glue, if you've managed to get it on there after that, I tend to take the masking tape down to the bottom of the ferrule. As you can see, that's a massive ferrule, that one. So I'll just use a bit of 10,000 grit steel wool on this. I do like to cut this into strips normally, and this one is 3,000. But what we'll do is we'll just pop a bit of this on, and again, don't go mad, don't touch the wood with it because you'll be taking the oil off. But now you can either do this, or you can cut strips and just pull them around. So I like the strips personally, but you don't want to be taking too much brass off. You don't really want to be taking any brass off, you're just shining it. But it's just a clean. Some people mix this with things like Brasso, so actually wet this and do it. You can do that. It's quicker to do it with a bit of glass paper as such, but I'd rather take my time, get a reasonable job, and don't pull upwards, because don't forget it's a trumpet tip and this will probably come off if it's not spot on. That's getting there, but just for the speed of the video, I'm going to pull this around the bottom and just See if we can tidy that a bit. Now, I know the videos are quite long, but the first few I did a while back, the feedback I got was people would rather I took longer and gave as much an explanation as I could, rather than just go and say, here's the tip already stuck on, cut the sides, there you go. Trying to get the thinking process as well. And I get lots of questions afterwards, so it's a case of trying to get through as many of the videos as I can. Of course, you can fast forward them if you're not sure. Right, let's have that off. Nails are good. Yeah, always have a set of nails if you can. Saves you a lot of time doing things like this. Right. I don't mind skimming the surface of something like this with 10,000 grit, just to take off any little bits, because it's not often enough. Yeah, don't make this a regular thing to clean your cue. I've got a video on cleaning cues, but this is just for a bit of speed on this one. Now, I could carry on with the ferrule, but I think you get a rough idea, rather than make it perfect. I'm not going to burnish sides or anything like that, don't see the point on that. Now that should give you a good idea of a different shape, and that's pretty much about as much as anyone would ever want. I would tidy that up a bit more obviously and clean the ferrule up and what have you, but that's pretty much there. Now what I do with the top for the fibres, I tend to use the 1500 to 3000 grit, and so I do cut this into strips generally, and I like to cut, excuse me, the top surface off. So when you get to this stage, it's all pretty much personal as to how you like it finished. So there you go. Hope that's given you a better idea of a trumpet tip. So I would tidy it up more, but this is mainly about how you cut it. Any questions, email me. Hopefully that's enough, and I'll try and get time to do a few more videos. Been a bit behind lately, but hopefully get some more time soon. See you on the next video.